All right, let's see if I can wrap this up in another one or at most two lectures on the play. This lecture is going to focus on marriage and how marriage is imagined and how marriage works in Twelfth Night, and what kind of possibilities there are for, say, performing what many of you had drawn attention to as sort of a sort of transgressive intimacy, right? Queer intimacy, but also non-queer intimacies that are transgressive, say class-based transgressions that someone like Malvolio imagines, right? Or that someone like Cesario or Viola imagines in her intimacy with Orsino. So I'd like us to think about these together, right? Because it's not simply that the intimacies are all sexually queer. They are transgressive in their imagined possibility, within and outside of the parameters of sexual engagement, right? So I would like us to think of these together. Let's start with the most obvious one that I think many of you were interested in hearing more about, which is the possible marriage imagined by Olivia, right, to Cesario, and Cesario and Olivia's relationship. So it starts very early with Olivia just falling flat like a ton of bricks for Cesario, right? This is just, her heart has just gone while she was promising a sort of timed and choreographed melancholia. What she ends up doing is having a very untimely lapse, right? Or very untimely fall from her plan, where she becomes a sort of enamored, delighted figure. Think back to Titania and Bottom, right? This is, it's also wrong, but it feels so great, right? It feels so right, or whatever you want to call it. So there is that level of intoxicating pleasure that Olivia feels in the experience of falling off the wagon of melancholia, right? So let us look at how Olivia responds to Cesario, and then how Cesario responds to Olivia, right? And Cesario has two kinds of responses. I would say it's not simply, I don't know what this is all about, I don't know how this is happening to me, oh me, oh my. No, I think there is that one affective performance that she offers us, but there is also the, I also think there is a flirtatious consumption of the power of being loved, right? The power of being the object of Olivia's affection, and she does delight in that song. So we'll look at this. In Act 1, end of Act 1, right, after Olivia and Cesario have had their banter of sorts, Cesario has tried in vain to convey Orsino's affections, and one must think that his failure has everything to do with the fact that the emotion that he's transmitting, right, is not really Orsino's emotion to be transmitted. So he's coming up with the beautiful, idealized version of love that he ascribes to Orsino, but Olivia's just too smart to fall for that, right? She sees through that, and she falls for the theory, the ideal, right? These are highly idealized people, characters, right? An ideal, ideal loving characters. And by these characters, I mean Olivia and Orsino, right? The ones who can afford to imagine the ideal world and kind of construct it around them in this isolated manner. So she falls for the theory of a lover who will cry halloo at her doorstep, right? So let's see what Viola says, and then we'll see what Olivia registers. This is towards the end of Act 1. Where Olivia says, "Your Lord does know my mind. I cannot love him, yet I suppose him virtuous, know him noble, of great estate, of fresh and stainless youth, in voices well divulged, free, learned, and valiant, and in dimension and the shape of nature a gracious person. But yet I cannot love him. He might have took his answer long ago." Viola says, "If I did love you in my master's flame," and this is where, one starts constructing her pleasure, Viola's pleasure, Cesario's pleasure, in imagining himself, in imagining herself as the one who had fallen in love with another woman, a woman like Olivia, right? Who of course, as we had said, her name contains Viola's name, so it's almost like falling in love with yourself, right? So she's imagining this world, and she says, "If I did love you in my master's flame, with such a suffering, such a deadly life, in your denial, I would find no sense. I would not understand it." "Why, what would you? Why, what would you?" asks Olivia, right? "Make me a willow cabin at your gate, and call upon my soul within the house. Write loyal cantons of contemned love, and sing them loud even in the dead of night. Halloo your name to the reverberate hills, and make the babbling gossip of the air cry out, 'Olivia!' Oh, you should not rest between the elements of air and earth, but you should pity me. You might do much. What is your parentage?" Right? Asks Olivia. Now, this is because the dream vision of Cesario, that Cesario has, of a sort of unrequited lover, of a lover whose words and poetic refrains and just pitiable subjectivity is going to be just, it will conquer all and everyone, right? I mean, what did Helen have? Just blonde hair or something like that. Cesario, or Viola as Cesario, is bringing it, right? Again, knowing the appropriate power of language and using it to convert an unrequited lover, an unrequiting lover, into a transformed and highly receptive lover, a lover who really is going to fall for all these tricks and pranks. Again, start seeing the motif of the prank or the trick and of the deception that is pulled throughout the play, right? Vis-a-vis love, vis-a-vis marriage, vis-a-vis intimacy. So it starts with Viola role-playing and setting up a scene in which she/he is the successful kind of lover, right? But it is a poetic lover, and that is why Olivia catches on like that and says, "What is your parentage?" Because this is not the kind of song that we're going to see Toby sing or Agichik sing or Festi sing. This is not the kind of song, well, Festi does sing sort of songs of love and about lovers, but there's clearly a sort of, he has a dismissive nature, or he has a dismissive relationship to the song that he sings, right? So he knows that the likes of Orsino and Olivia want to hear these songs because they are not interested in the appropriative ways in which pleasure can work. They are really interested in the theoric, right? They're really interested in the book and in the way the book describes and defines these emotions, and they want to feel it exactly like it is. So in this particular instance, Cesario nails it, right? Gives us the harrowed lover that she is going to be. That this is going to be just unbearable for anybody. And Olivia's like, me too. I'm totally into this descriptor that you have just offered for yourself, right? I'm into it. And she does fall for it, so that when Cesario leaves, right, Olivia, when she's by herself on stage at this point, and there's the very end of Act 1, she says, I know not what, and fear to find mine eye too great a flatterer for my mind. Fate show that false ourselves we do not owe. What is decreed must be, and be this so. Right? This is what she loves, and she's like, it's not in my control, you guys. I don't know what's going on. I just fell in love with this guy who showed up, this little boyish man, mannish boy, girlish boy, womanish man. You know, this beautiful, beautiful Cesario shows up and talks about a love or being a lover that is irresistible, right? And even if he says, if I were to be wooing in my master's person, or for him, I would be like this. But it's, you know, she's very, she being Olivia, has very conveniently kind of eradicated Orsino from the dynamic, unless it is that he remains a sort of tool that can reel her desired lover back in, right? So what is interesting to note in this whole thing is that Cesario, and Viola as Cesario, recognizes what would intoxicate Olivia, because she knows what would intoxicate her, right? And it's this performing the love to herself. If we could be our own true lover, wouldn't it be ideal? And that, I think, is about the queerest way in which we are encouraged to imagine intimacy and marriage in this play. It would be ideal if we could just marry ourselves, right? And we could be our true lover and write ourselves poems and not have any worry about heartbreak or deception or mediocrity or things just not sounding perfect, right? Wouldn't that be ideal? And that is what we are offered in this possibility of Viola and Olivia coming together in love. Very different to how Malvolio imagines himself coming together with Olivia, which is the next marriage imagined intimacy that I'm going to talk about in my next lecture, which will start in a few minutes. I will see you soon.